Hands behind your back. Now! The shout tore through the quiet streets of Bellevue Way, so sharp it made every head turn. Two police officers stormed forward, guns drawn, sirens flashing blue against the polished glass of nearby boutiques, while two teenage girls stood frozen, their hands still holding down a white man struggling on the pavement. That man was Ethan Caldwell, a thief caught red-handed with a stolen wallet. Yet somehow, in that twisted moment, the ones being shouted at weren't the criminal, but the heroes. The words that came next cut deeper than any wound. Drop him, now! You're under arrest! Before going into the story, tell me, where are you watching from? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to support these true stories of justice and humanity. Now, let's begin. Aaliyah and Brianna Thompson were just 17, honor students at Lakeside Academy, smart, disciplined, and raised to do what's right. They had grown up believing that doing good always mattered. That afternoon, while walking toward their favorite cafe, Rainier Brew, they saw a man snatch a woman's wallet and sprint down the sidewalk, without thinking twice. The twins ran after him. Aaliyah, the calmer one, shouted for help. Brianna, fueled by instinct, cut across the corner, intercepting the thief. Within seconds, they had him pinned down. The woman who had been robbed cried out in relief. People watched in surprise. For a brief moment, justice seemed simple, until the patrol car screeched in. Officer Daniel Brooks stepped out first. Tall, white, mid-40s, with the kind of authority that silences crowds. Behind him came Officer Kyle Harlan, a decade hardened by cynicism. They didn't ask questions. They didn't look at the evidence. They saw two young black girls on top of a white man and decided who the threat was. "What's going on here?" Brooks barked, already reaching for his cuffs. "Sir, he stole," Aaliyah tried to explain, but Brooks cut her off. I said, "Step back." His tone was sharp, final, dismissive. Brianna raised her hands, trying to calm things. We stopped him. We didn't hurt him. Enough. Harlan interrupted coldly. "You don't belong in Bellevue." Those words, quiet but full of poison, froze the air. Caldwell seized the moment, still lying on the ground. He clutched his ribs and groaned. "They attacked me. They tried to rob me." The absurdity hung there, but Brooks didn't hesitate. "You two. Turn around. Hands behind your backs." Aaliyah's heart dropped. "Officer, check the wallet in his pocket. Please. He stole it from that woman." But they didn't check. They didn't even ask the victim. Harlan moved closer, his expression tight with irritation. "Don't make it worse." Sweetheart, that word, sweetheart, dripped with condescension. And Brianna, unable to hold back, said softly, "You're arresting the wrong people." In an instant, Harlan pushed her back, his hand hitting her shoulder harder than necessary. She stumbled and fell, scraping her arm on the curb. A small crowd gasped, some raising their phones instinctively. "Don't touch her!" Aaliyah cried, tears of disbelief forming in her eyes. "We didn't do anything wrong." But the cuffs were already clinking shut, metal on skin, cold, humiliating, final. Caldwell stood up, dusting off his jacket, smirking like he'd just escaped a ticket. "See? I told you," he muttered under his breath, loud enough for them to hear. Brooks nodded toward him. "You're free to go." "Sir, sorry for the misunderstanding." The thief walked away without looking back, blending into the murmuring crowd. Inside the patrol car, silence filled the air. Aaliyah sat still, staring through the glass, trying to memorize every detail, the street signs, the faces, the injustice unfolding in plain sight. Brianna was trembling, her voice breaking. "Why are they doing this to us?" "Aaliyah?" Her sister didn't answer. She couldn't. All she could think was how quickly good deeds could be twisted into crimes when skin color entered the equation. At the station, things got worse. The girls were separated for questioning. The fluorescent lights flickered above cold gray walls. Officer Brooks typed up the report, his voice detached. Suspects resisted apprehension, claimed to be stopping a robbery. Harlan leaned back, crossing his arms. Typical story. They didn't see frightened children. They saw potential criminals. When Aaliyah tried to speak again, Brooks glared. You can tell your story later. For now, just answer the questions. Out of sight. Brianna sat alone in another room, her scraped arm burning. Every sound echoed, the click of doors, the hum of distant radios. She replayed the scene in her mind, the man's smirk, the officer's shove, the crowd doing nothing. Her body shook, not from fear, but from disbelief. She whispered, "We did the right thing. Why does it feel like we're the ones who did wrong?" Back at the precinct's main office, Chief Alicia Bennett received a call. Reports of a questionable arrest involving minors in Bellevue. She frowned. Brooks's name was on the report. A veteran with prior complaints. Nothing major, but enough to raise eyebrows. "Send me the footage," she ordered. All of it. The words body cam gave her hope. The truth would be there. But Harlan, knowing the footage exposed too much, whispered to Brooks, "We'll handle it before it gets upstairs." Brooks hesitated. A part of him still believed he was right. But something in his gut twisted. The same feeling he'd had years ago after another questionable call. "Kyle, maybe we should." "No." Harlan cut in sharply. "We followed procedure. Don't start doubting now." But Brooks couldn't shake the image of Brianna's tears. He tried to ignore it, focusing on his paperwork, yet his hands trembled as he typed. Meanwhile, Aaliyah sat quietly in the holding room, her mind, disciplined and sharp, began piecing everything together. The words they used, the way they ignored evidence, the way they called her hostile when she spoke up. It all formed a pattern she'd read about, but never truly understood until now. Prejudice wasn't always loud. Sometimes it hid behind calm voices and official reports. 15 minutes. That's how long the whole incident had lasted. 15 minutes to destroy innocence, to stain a record, to turn two young heroes into suspects. When Chief Bennett finally watched the early body cam footage, she didn't say a word. The truth was right there. Two girls trying to help, one man lying, and two officers blinded by bias. She closed the file, her jaw tight. "This," she said softly, "is going to be a problem, and somewhere in the dark hallway." As Aaliyah whispered a prayer for strength and Brianna fought back tears, none of them knew that their last names, Thompson, would soon shake the entire state of Washington, because their father wasn't just anyone. He was Marcus Thompson, the state attorney general, and when he found out what happened to his daughters, the system itself would tremble. The holding room smelled of cold metal and stale coffee. Aaliyah sat on one side of the table, her wrists still red from the handcuffs. Officer Brooks leaned back in his chair, flipping through his notes as if she were just another suspect on a long list. "You claim you were trying to stop a robbery," he said, his voice measured, detached. "Yes, sir," Aaliyah replied, steady but firm. "The man, Ethan Caldwell, stole a woman's wallet. We chased him. You can check the street cameras." Brooks didn't look up. "You expect me to believe two 17-year-olds just happened to tackle a grown man for justice's sake?" Aaliyah's patience cracked for the first time. "No, officer. I expect you to believe the truth." Her voice was calm, deliberate, almost too adult for her age. That tone unsettled Brooks more than he'd admit. He stared at her, then muttered, "You've got quite an attitude for someone in custody." Across the hall, Brianna sat alone in another room, shaking. The scrape on her arm had stopped bleeding, but the sting was deeper. The humiliation, the confusion, the disbelief. Officer Harlan entered, closing the door behind him. "You know why you're here?" he asked, standing too close. "Because your sister decided to play hero?" Brianna looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "We didn't do anything wrong." Harlan smirked. "That's not what the report says." He leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. "You'll regret crossing us. You understand?" She froze. It wasn't a threat shouted in anger. It was whispered in control. When he left, she put her head in her hands and started to cry silently, whispering to herself, "Why are they doing this?" Brooks walked into the hallway, trying to shake off a feeling that had been building since the arrest. He had kids too. One of them, Ethan, not much younger than these girls. He thought about how his son would see this if it ever came out. For a brief second, guilt pierced through his professional armor. But Harlan's voice from the doorway snapped him back. "Don't go soft. Daniel, we're just following the book." Brooks didn't answer. He rubbed his temples, staring at the body cam drive sitting in his pocket like a ticking bomb. "You uploaded the footage yet?" he asked. "Not yet," Harlan replied coolly. "I'll take care of it later." Their eyes met, both knowing later might mean never. In the corner office, the phone rang. "Detective Unit, Sergeant Miller speaking." The voice on the other end was steady. "Urgent. This is Elena Thompson. I was told my daughters are being held at your station." Miller hesitated. "Your daughters?" "Aaliyah and Brianna Thompson," she said. "They were arrested near Bellevue Way." The sergeant checked the roster, his face paling slightly as he read the names. Yes, ma'am. I see them here. You'll need to speak with the officers in charge." Elena's tone sharpened. "Who are they?" "Officers Brooks and Harlan." There was silence on the line. Then Elena's voice dropped to a controlled calm that only lawyers and mothers of the wronged could master. "We'll be there within 15 minutes. She hung up. At home, Marcus Thompson was reviewing policy drafts when the call came through. "Marcus, it's Elena. It's the girls. They've been arrested." The pen in his hand froze. "Arrested? For what?" "Apparently for stopping a robbery," she said bitterly. The Attorney General of Washington rose from his chair, his pulse steadying not from shock, but from a deep, practiced restraint. "Which precinct?" "Downtown Seattle." He grabbed his coat. "I'll meet you there." Meanwhile, inside the station, Brooks returned to Aaliyah's room. "Your parents are on their way," he said flatly. "They're lawyers?" "Something like that," she replied quietly. Brooks raised an eyebrow but didn't press. Instead, he switched on the recorder. "State your full name for the record." "Aaliyah Thompson," she said, then added, "And my sister's name is Brianna Thompson." The surname landed heavier than she knew. Brooks paused for a moment, sensing something familiar, though he couldn't place it yet, at that same moment. Harlan walked past Brianna's room, glancing in as she sat quietly, her eyes red but defiant. "You'll learn to respect authority," he muttered under his breath. She didn't reply. He walked off, thinking he'd won the psychological game, never realizing she had memorized every word he'd said. Elena and Marcus arrived together, escorted through the precinct by a nervous desk officer who had no idea who they were. Yet, when they entered the holding area, silence fell. Elena's eyes locked on her daughters first, both sitting behind a glass window, frightened but unharmed. Then her gaze shifted to the two men standing near the door. "Which one of you is Brooks?" she asked. Brooks stepped forward. "That would be me? And Harlan?" The other man nodded, his expression indifferent. Marcus's calm, polished voice carried weight even before his title was mentioned. "Officers, my daughters were detained without cause. I'd like to review the probable cause statement and the arrest footage." Harlan blinked. Who exactly are you? Marcus pulled out his identification card. Marcus Thompson, Attorney General of Washington State. The room froze. Brooks's face drained of color. Harlan's jaw tightened. The chief's voice came over the intercom moments later, sharp and demanding. Brooks, Harlan, in my office, now, in the small office upstairs. Chief Alicia Bennett stood behind her desk, arms crossed. Explain why the Attorney General's daughters are sitting in my holding cells. Brooks spoke first, stumbling through a vague explanation about a mistaken assault report. Harlan tried to interject, but Bennett cut him off. Do either of you realize what you've done? She pressed play on the preliminary footage that had just been uploaded. The body cam from Brooks's chest unit. The room filled with the image of two terrified teenagers trying to explain themselves while a thief walked away untouched. She didn't finish watching. Get out. Now. Back downstairs. Marcus comforted his daughters while Elena reviewed the paperwork. They claimed you resisted arrest, she said softly. They're lying, Brianna whispered, eyes wet. They shoved me. Aaliyah nodded, voice low but firm. Mom, it's all recorded. They can't hide it forever. Marcus placed a steady hand on her shoulder. They won't. Sweetheart, we'll make sure of that. Outside the interrogation room, Brooks stood motionless, staring through the glass. He saw the family together, the mother's fire, the father's authority, the daughter's quiet strength, and something inside him cracked. He thought of his own son, Ethan, who hadn't spoken to him in weeks, disgusted by the way he treated people on the job. You can't keep doing this, a small voice in Brooks's mind whispered. But before he could speak, Harlan pulled him aside. Don't say a word. We'll let this blow over. Brooks looked at him, weary and conflicted. It's not going to blow over. Kyle, not this time. That night, when the station quieted, Brooks sat alone at his desk, replaying the footage on mute. Each frame told a story he wished he could erase, not because it ruined his career, but because it showed exactly who he had become. Across town, Elena and Marcus held their daughters close. They didn't yet know how far this case would go, but they both felt the same fire rising. What began as an act of injustice was about to turn into a reckoning that would shake Seattle to its core. Morning sunlight spilled across the Seattle skyline, but inside the police precinct, tension clung to every corner like thick fog. Officer Daniel Brooks hadn't slept. The body cam footage kept replaying in his mind, two innocent girls pleading for justice while he stood there, blind to the truth. He sat in the break room, his untouched coffee going cold, staring into nothing. Officer Kyle Harlan entered, adjusting his belt with the arrogance of a man who thought he'd won. You look like hell, he said, slapping Brooks on the shoulder. Relax. It's handled. Brooks didn't look up. Handled? His voice was low. Kyle, we arrested the Attorney General's daughters. Harlan froze for a split second before forcing a laugh. So what? They broke the law. Nobody's above it. Brooks leaned back, shaking his head. You don't get it. This isn't going away. Harlan smirked. It'll go away if we make it. He tapped his chest. I already deleted my footage. Brooks's heart sank. Down the hall, Chief Alicia Bennett was already briefing Captain Derek Washington, head of internal affairs. Marcus Thompson filed a formal complaint. She said, We're treating it as a civil rights violation. Derek, a calm and composed black officer with 25 years in the force, nodded slowly. Then we'll do this by the book. Pull all footage, statements, timestamps, no leaks. The chief sighed. It's not just about protocol anymore. The press is circling, the mayor's office is calling, and Senator Robert Klein is stirring the pot. Derek frowned. Klein. The one always grandstanding about law and order? That's him. He's already calling this Political theater? The chief folded her arms. But what he doesn't know is, this theater's got a real audience now. In the conference room below, Marcus and Elena Thompson sat across from the chief. The air was still, heavy with restrained fury. Marcus's voice was calm, but his words cut through the tension like a blade. My daughters were handcuffed for stopping a felony. They were shoved, humiliated, and accused based on skin color. You don't get to sweep that under the rug. Chief Bennett met his gaze evenly. Mr. Attorney General, I assure you, this department takes this seriously. Elena leaned forward, her tone precise, the tone of a lawyer who'd fought too many of these battles. Then start by suspending Brooks and Harlan pending investigation. And I want that body cam footage secured, immediately. The chief hesitated. We'll review it today. Marcus stood. You'll do more than review it. You'll release it. Meanwhile, in his small church office on the south side, Pastor Jamal Lewis was reading the morning news when his phone buzzed. Daniel Brooks. The screen read, Jamal answered. Surprised. Daniel, it's been a while. Brooks's voice trembled slightly. Pastor, I think I messed up. Badly. Tell me. Brooks hesitated, then spoke in bursts. 2 girls. I arrested them yesterday. Thought they assaulted a man. Turns out they were stopping a robbery. And now I find out their father's the Attorney General. Jamal leaned back, his voice calm and steady. You didn't just mess up. Son, you showed your heart to yourself. Silence lingered on the line. You've got a choice. Daniel, Jamal continued. Hide behind the badge, or stand up and tell the truth. Brooks exhaled shakily. You think anyone would listen? They don't have to, Jamal said softly. You do what's right because it's right, not because it's safe. Back at the precinct, Elena was meeting with Internal Affairs when Captain Derek Washington entered, holding a printed file. Mrs. Thompson, he said, we reviewed Brooks's footage. It confirms your daughter's account, but Harlan's footage is missing. Elena's eyes narrowed. Deleted? Most likely. Derek looked over at Marcus. We'll retrieve it. Every deleted file leaves a trail. Marcus nodded. Do that. I'll handle the politics. By noon. The story was already rippling through private circles in Olympia. Senator Klein saw an opportunity. On live radio, he declared, we respect Attorney General Thompson, but using his position to intimidate law enforcement is unacceptable. This is not justice. It's political grandstanding, the host asked. Do you think there was racial bias? Senator? Klein smiled thinly. I think people are too quick to cry racism when accountability doesn't go their way. His words spread fast, igniting division. But what Klein didn't know was that Elena had already filed a civil lawsuit not only against the Seattle Police Department, but personally naming Brooks, Harlan, and Ethan Caldwell at that same moment in a small downtown apartment. Caldwell sat watching the news, pale and restless. The story was everywhere now. Teen sisters wrongfully arrested after stopping thief. His name hadn't surfaced yet, but he knew it would. He paced, cursing under his breath. They're gonna pin this on me, he muttered. He packed a bag, ready to disappear, but 2 detectives were already on their way with a warrant. Justice, slow and quiet, was catching up. That afternoon, Marcus stood in front of a row of microphones at the state attorney's office. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, but his voice remained calm and resolute. This isn't just about my daughters, he said. This is about every child who's ever been treated as guilty before proven innocent. We will pursue justice, not vengeance, and we will reform the system that allowed this to happen, across town. Aaliyah watched the broadcast from her bedroom, her face a mix of pride and disbelief. He's doing it, she whispered. Brianna, still shaken, sat beside her, drawing in her sketchbook, Two figures, one kneeling in cuffs, the other standing in light. "He always does," she said softly. At the precinct, Brooks sat in silence as internal affairs officers entered his office. "We're collecting your body cam and service files," one of them said. Harlan stormed in moments later. "You told them? You actually told them?" Brooks didn't flinch. They had the footage already. "You idiot!" Harlan hissed. "Do you realize what this means? They'll destroy us." Brooks looked at him steadily. "No. Kyle, you destroyed yourself." Later that evening, Brooks drove to Pastor Lewis's church. The old wooden doors creaked open, and the scent of candles and polished wood filled the air. Jamal looked up from the pulpit. "You came." Brooks nodded. "I can't keep lying. I saw those girls' faces. They didn't deserve what I did." Jamal placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then make it right. Confess. You'll lose your badge, but you might save your soul." Brooks nodded slowly, tears forming. "Maybe that's what I need." Meanwhile, in their home office, Elena reviewed evidence while Marcus took a late-night call. "Chief Bennett?" he said. "Yes. Mr. Thompson. I've reviewed everything. Brooks will testify. Harlan's on leave pending investigation. We'll find that deleted footage." Marcus exhaled. "Thank you, Chief, for what it's worth," she added quietly. "Those girls did more for justice in 15 minutes than some of us have done in decades." When the call ended, Marcus walked to his daughter's room. Both were asleep, the faint glow of Brianna's sketchpad beside them. He stood there silently for a moment, pride and sorrow mixing in his chest. Elena joined him, placing a hand on his arm. "They're strong," she whispered. "Stronger than we ever were." Marcus nodded. "Tomorrow, the world will know who they are." And as the first morning light broke again over Seattle, the story was front-page news. Two sisters once branded as suspects were now the spark of a movement. But behind the headlines, darker forces were stirring. Harlan plotting in silence, Klein building his political weapon, and the city bracing for the storm that was only beginning. By the end of that week, Seattle's police headquarters felt less like a place of order and more like a battlefield of silence. Every officer seemed to whisper when passing Brooks in the hallway, and every news report tightened the noose around Harlan's neck. The once confident veteran now looked over his shoulder constantly, aware that the walls were closing in. What began as a routine arrest had become the state's biggest scandal in a decade. And yet, beneath all the noise, something darker brewed, an effort to make the truth disappear before it destroyed the wrong people's careers. Officer Kyle Harlan sat in his office, face lit only by the glow of his computer screen. He scrolled through the evidence logs, searching for the digital trace of the body cam footage he'd deleted. But Internal Affairs had already noticed the missing file. Captain Derek Washington's report landed on Chief Alicia Bennett's desk that morning. Deletion confirmed. Possible obstruction of justice, Harlan muttered to himself. Not if they can't prove intent. His hands trembled as he opened his personal email and typed a message to a fellow officer. "Keep quiet, or you're done. No one saw anything that day. Do you understand?" He hit send, then leaned back, breathing hard. What he didn't know was that his email had been flagged in the internal system. Within hours, Washington would see it, and that one line, "Keep quiet, or you're done," would become the very nail in his coffin. Meanwhile, Brooks was unraveling in his own quiet way. He'd taken leave, citing stress-related issues. But the truth was simpler. He couldn't bear to wear the uniform anymore. Pastor Jamal Lewis had visited him again, finding him sitting at his kitchen table, surrounded by old photos of his family. "I don't even know who I am anymore," Brooks said, voice heavy with exhaustion. 20 years on the force, and all I've got to show for it is shame." Jamal listened, his calm presence a stark contrast to Brooks's turmoil. "Daniel, redemption isn't clean. It hurts, but you've already started walking toward it." Brooks looked up, eyes hollow. "Then why does it feel like the world's burning down because of me?" Jamal gave a faint smile. "Because truth has a way of setting fires before it sets things right." Back at the Thompson household, the family was facing its own storm. Marcus was being attacked in the media, accused of exploiting his position to humiliate law enforcement. Senator Robert Klein had gone on live television again, sneering through a polished grin. "This is nothing but political theater," he told the anchor. "Marcus Thompson wants to use his daughter's mistake to push his anti-police agenda. It's shameful." The segment spread across the internet, gathering angry comments and divisive headlines. Marcus watched quietly, jaw tight. "He's weaponizing our pain," he said to Elena, who sat beside him, scrolling through the article. "Let him," she replied calmly. "When we're done, the evidence will speak louder than his politics." At Lakeside Academy, the twins faced a different kind of cruelty. Whispers followed them through the halls. Aaliyah's classmates who once admired her now looked away. One girl muttered as they passed, "Guess you can't buy innocence." Brianna, more sensitive, felt every word like a cut. At lunch, she sat alone until Aaliyah joined her, setting down a tray. "Don't let them get to you," Aaliyah said softly. "We know who we are." Brianna looked down. "Do we? Because right now it feels like they've already decided for us." Aaliyah took a deep breath. "Then we'll make them see." That night, she began drafting a proposal for a student initiative on equality and accountability, a way to turn their humiliation into change in the city. Pressure built on the police department. The mayor, Lauren Peterson, held an emergency meeting with Chief Bennett. "We need control of this narrative," Peterson said sharply. "Public trust is dropping. Klein's spinning it like we're at war with the state." Chief Bennett stood firm. "Mayor, this isn't a narrative. It's misconduct." Peterson's tone softened, but her words carried warning. "Then clean it up fast. We can't afford chaos before re-election season." When Bennett left the office, her decision was already made. She would not bury the truth, no matter the politics. Captain Derek Washington, meanwhile, had discovered Harlan's threatening email. He printed it, placed it in a folder marked obstruction evidence, and walked straight to Bennett's office. "It's worse than we thought," he said, handing her the file. She read it once, her expression hardening. He threatened witnesses. "Yes, ma'am. Officers Jenkins and Price are ready to testify. They said he told them to forget the body cam existed." Bennett nodded grimly. "Suspend him. Effective immediately." Washington hesitated. "It'll blow up." "Let it," she said coldly. "The truth's already on fire." That afternoon, Harlan was called into the chief's office. The confrontation was short and devastating. "You're on suspension pending investigation," Bennett said. "You can't do that." Harlan barked. "I've served this department for 18 years. Bennett stood, eyes sharp. "Then you should have known better than to disgrace it," as he stormed out. Officers in the hallway looked away, their silence louder than judgment. Across town, Brooks was doing the opposite, stepping toward accountability. He called Elena Thompson directly, his voice shaking. "Mrs. Thompson, this is Daniel Brooks." There was a pause, then Elena's measured reply. "I'm listening. I'm ready to testify." He said quietly, "I'll tell the court exactly what happened. The bias, the rush to judgment, everything, for a moment." She said nothing. Then, gently, "That's the first decent thing you've done since this started." He nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "I know. I'm sorry." "Don't say sorry to me," she said. "Say it in court." That evening, as the sun dipped over the skyline, Aaliyah found her father standing on the balcony, staring out over the city lights. "Dad," she said softly, "do you ever feel like this will never end?" Marcus looked at her, his expression both weary and proud. "Justice doesn't end, sweetheart. It evolves. And sometimes, it begins in the moments when you feel most powerless." Brianna joined them, holding her sketchbook. On the open page was a drawing, a police badge cracked in half, with light shining through the break. Marcus smiled faintly. "You're both doing more for this country than most adults ever will." But not everyone shared that belief. In a downtown bar that night, Harlan sat alone, staring at the TV as it played a local news update. Officer suspended amid racial bias allegations. His own photo appeared on screen. A couple of off-duty officers at the bar glanced his way, whispering. One muttered, "Should have kept your mouth shut." Kyle. Harlan clenched his fists, the humiliation stinging worse than fear. He took a deep breath, eyes burning. "I'm not going down alone," he muttered, back in the Thompson home. As the family gathered for dinner, the phone rang again. Elena answered, listening carefully before hanging up. "That was Derek Washington," she said, turning to Marcus. "Harlan's suspension is official. Brooks will testify. The case is moving forward, for the first time in weeks." The air in the room lifted. Aaliyah smiled faintly, and Brianna exhaled in relief. But Marcus remained thoughtful. "Good," he said quietly, "because now they'll start fighting back harder. Outside." The city's rain began to fall, steady, relentless, washing the streets that had seen too much silence. The truth was coming, and it would not arrive quietly. The lines were drawn, justice on one side, denial on the other, and as the storm gathered, everyone knew that when it finally broke. Nothing in Seattle's justice system would ever be the same again. The courthouse steps were swarmed with reporters by dawn. The case of State of Washington versus officers Daniel Brooks and Kyle Harlan had become a symbol of everything broken, and everything still worth fighting for. Cameras flashed as the Thompson family walked up the stone steps, Marcus in his dark suit, Elena with her files pressed tightly to her chest, and behind them, Aaliyah and Brianna, side by side, their faces calm but resolute. The story that began with a theft on Bellevue Way had become a national conversation, inside the courtroom, air thick with tension. The crowd quieted when Judge Margaret Foster entered, a woman known for her fairness and steel resolve. "This court is now in session," she said, her voice echoing through the marble chamber. "The people versus officers Brooks and Harlan." Elena stood first. "Your Honor," she began, "my clients, Aaliyah and Brianna Thompson, were wrongfully detained, assaulted, and humiliated for doing what was right. This case isn't just about two girls. It's about what happens when bias wears a badge." She turned slightly toward the jury, her words deliberate and human. They were heroes. They stopped a thief, but instead of thanks, they got handcuffs because of their skin color. Murmurs rippled through the gallery, across the room. Harlan scowled, arms crossed, his lawyer whispering in his ear. Brooks sat beside him, eyes downcast, avoiding everyone's gaze. When the prosecution finished, the defense took its turn, painting the event as a misunderstanding. Harlan's attorney stood tall. "My client followed protocol. In chaotic situations, officers must make split-second decisions." He gestured toward the sisters. "These young women may have meant well, but good intentions don't erase the risks officers face daily." Marcus clenched his jaw, his knuckles whitening on the table. Aaliyah glanced at her father, whispering, "He's twisting it." Marcus nodded slightly. That's what they do. But truth wins in time. The first witness called was Ethan Caldwell, the thief who started it all, dressed in an ill-fitting suit. He fidgeted on the stand. The prosecutor, a young assistant named Carter Ruiz, asked simply, "Mr. Caldwell, did you steal the wallet of a woman named Linda Meyer on Bellevue Way?" Caldwell hesitated, glancing toward Harlan, then back to Ruiz. I might have picked it up. Yeah. Laughter and gasps filled the courtroom. Picked it up? Ruiz pressed. You were chased by two girls screaming thief and held down until police arrived. Caldwell shifted uncomfortably. They overreacted. They didn't have to tackle me. But you did steal the wallet? Yeah, fine. I did. But they didn't need to get violent. Ruiz leaned closer. Mr. Caldwell, were you injured? Just bruises. Did they threaten you? No. Did they call you names, use slurs, or show aggression? No. Then why did you accuse them of assault? Caldwell's mouth tightened. Because the officer told me it'd make things easier. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Judge Foster's gavel struck once. Order! Elena glanced at Marcus, her eyes sharp. That's it, she whispered. Brooks looked pale, shifting in his seat as though the walls were closing in. The next witness was him. When he walked to the stand, the courtroom was painfully still. He raised his hand, swore the oath, and sat down for a moment. He didn't speak. Then, in a low, unsteady voice, he began, I made a terrible mistake. Elena approached. Tell the court what you mean by that. Officer Brooks, when we arrived that day, I saw two black teenagers on top of a white man. I didn't see two citizens stopping a crime. I saw suspects because of how I was conditioned. His voice trembled. I didn't ask questions. I didn't check the evidence. I just assumed. He turned toward the girls. I'm sorry. A hush fell. Even the reporters stopped typing. Elena stepped closer. Officer Brooks, were you ordered to alter or delete your body cam footage? No, he said. But Officer Harlan told me not to upload it until further notice. And what did he tell others? Brooks swallowed. He told Jenkins and Price to forget it existed. So there was an attempt to conceal evidence? Yes. Elena nodded, her voice firm. Thank you, Officer Brooks. No further questions. When it was Harlan's turn to take the stand, the tension cracked like thunder. His defense attorney tried to paint him as a scapegoat, a veteran officer caught in political crossfire. But when Captain Derek Washington was called to testify, the truth hit harder than any accusation. We found deleted footage fragments from Harlan's device. Washington said it showed him pushing Brianna Thompson after she questioned his authority. Elena played the recovered clip. The courtroom gasped as the video projected across the wall, Brianna crying out as Harlan's hand struck her shoulder, her voice pleading. We didn't do anything wrong. The look of disdain on Harlan's face froze in time. The prosecutor turned back to him. Officer Harlan, is that you? His jaw clenched. I was maintaining control of the scene by assaulting a 17-year-old? She resisted. The footage shows otherwise. Harlan's composure cracked. You people twist everything. I did my job, he shouted, pointing toward Marcus. You turned this into a circus. The judge's gavel slammed. Enough. When closing statements came, Elena's voice carried not just evidence, but truth. What you've seen here is not an isolated mistake. It's a reflection of a deeper sickness, one where perception replaces judgment and color replaces character. My clients didn't just suffer injustice, they revealed it. And if this court stands for anything, it must stand for what's right. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Each tick of the clock felt like thunder in the quiet room where the Thompson family waited. Brianna held her mother's hand tightly. Aaliyah stared straight ahead, lips trembling but determined, when the bailiff finally entered. Everyone stood. The foreman cleared his throat. We find Officer Daniel Brooks guilty of negligence and misconduct. With recommendation for dismissal and reform assistance, we find Officer Kyle Harlan guilty of assault, obstruction of justice, and violation of civil rights. The courtroom erupted. Harlan shouted curses as two deputies restrained him. Brooks lowered his head, whispering, "Thank you," toward the Thompsons, tears running down his face. Marcus closed his eyes, exhaling deeply, the first breath of peace he'd taken in months. Judge Foster banged her gavel once more. Let this verdict remind every officer that justice is not blind to color, but it must never be guided by it. As they stepped outside, cameras flashed once again, but this time, the questions weren't hostile. They were hopeful. Aaliyah faced the microphones with poise beyond her years. "We didn't fight to punish," she said softly. "We fought to prove that doing the right thing still matters," Brianna added quietly. "We forgive, but we won't forget." Their words spread across the nation that night, replayed on every network, echoing in classrooms, courtrooms, and homes. For the first time, the story wasn't about outrage, it was about hope, and somewhere inside a cold holding cell, Harlan sat alone, the weight of his choices pressing down on him, while Brooks, dismissed but free, signed his name on a volunteer form to join a new bias awareness training program. The system had been shaken, but something purer had begun to rise from its cracks, the faint but steady sound of justice finding its voice again. The verdict had been read, the applause had faded, but what followed was not victory. It was reckoning. The Thompson family returned home that evening to a quiet house, where the weight of everything finally settled. Elena sat by the window, her laptop open to a flood of emails. Congratulations from civil rights groups, threats from anonymous accounts, and endless interview requests. Marcus stood behind her, his eyes weary but resolute. "They'll come after us now," he said softly. She nodded without looking up. "Let them. We did what was right." In another part of the city, Officer Daniel Brooks sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the termination notice in his hands. The department had officially dismissed him. No pension, no shield, no badge. Yet strangely, he felt lighter. The silence in his apartment was broken only by the soft buzz of his phone. It was a text from his son, Ethan, the first in months. "Proud of you, Dad." Finally, Brooks let out a shaky breath and smiled faintly. Redemption, he realized, didn't always come with applause. Sometimes, it came with forgiveness. Meanwhile, Harlan's fate was sealed. The former officer sat in a county jail cell, hands clasped together, staring at the cracks in the wall. His lawyers were negotiating a plea deal to reduce his sentence, but he refused to sign anything. "I'm not admitting to something I didn't do," he muttered to himself, though even he no longer believed it. The other inmates didn't care who he used to be. The badge meant nothing here. When lights went out that night, he lay awake, haunted by memories of the girl's face, Brianna's tears, Aaliyah's calm defiance, Brooks's final words in court. "We judged them by their skin, not their actions." Those words replayed endlessly in his mind, louder than any cell door slamming shut. Outside those walls, Seattle was changing. The police department launched a sweeping reform program led by Chief Alicia Bennett and Captain Derek Washington. Mandatory bias training became law for all recruits. Body cam tampering was now a felony. And in a bold move inspired by the Thompson case, the state approved the Community Equity Review Board, giving citizens power to review misconduct complaints. The initiative was met with mixed reactions: applause from reformers, outrage from police unions. But as Marcus said during a press conference, if justice makes you uncomfortable, it's because you've grown too comfortable with injustice. His words echoed through news cycles for weeks, quoted in editorials and university lectures alike. Brooks found himself invited to speak at one of the first training sessions. He almost didn't go. The shame was still raw, but Pastor Jamal Lewis convinced him. Your fall is your lesson. Daniel. Don't waste it, standing before a room of new recruits. Brooks cleared his throat. I was you once, he began. I thought wearing a badge made me right by default. I thought fear was judgment. And one day, I learned I was wrong. The hard way. He paused, his voice soft but firm. Bias blinds us to truth. It makes good people do evil in the name of order. Don't let that be your legacy. The room was silent. A young officer in the front row raised his hand. Do you think people can really change? Brooks smiled faintly. If I didn't, I wouldn't be standing here. For the Thompson twins. Life after the trial was both healing and haunting. Aaliyah returned to Lakeside Academy, walking past the same halls where whispers once followed her. Now, those whispers had turned into admiration. The principal, Charles Ellis, greeted her with awkward sincerity. Your actions made this school re-examine its values, he admitted. We're introducing an equity curriculum next semester. Aaliyah nodded politely. That's good. Sir, just make sure it's not a lesson people forget after graduation. She spent her afternoons volunteering at the Student Equity Council she helped create, mentoring younger students on standing up against prejudice. Brianna's recovery took longer. The flash of the police lights, the sound of handcuffs clicking, the feeling of falling. Those moments still woke her at night. With the help of Dr. Sarah Carter, her therapist, she began to channel her pain into art. Her first painting after the trial showed a pair of hands breaking free from metal cuffs, light pouring through the cracks. It went viral online under the title, Freedom's First Breath. A local gallery invited her to host an exhibit, and during the opening night, she stood nervously beside her artwork as people filed in. Activists, teachers, and even Brooks himself, who approached her quietly. You turned your pain into something powerful, he said softly. That's more than I ever did. Brianna looked at him, hesitant but composed. You admitted what you did. That's powerful too. For the first time. Both smiled, not as victim and offender, but as two people changed by the same truth. Elena, too, found herself transformed. The case propelled her into national recognition. Invitations poured in from civil rights organizations, universities, and even the Department of Justice. Yet she stayed grounded, focusing on her new project, the Thompson Initiative, a legal aid network for families facing racial discrimination. She refused any title, any salary. Justice isn't a career. She told Marcus one evening, it's a commitment. He smiled, proud yet wary. And commitments can be heavy. She took his hand. So we'll carry it together. Marcus himself became a reluctant symbol of reform, re-elected by a landslide. He used his new term to push a bill requiring independent oversight of police misconduct across Washington state. Senator Klein tried to oppose him, claiming it was an overreach of executive power. But leaked documents soon revealed that Klein had received campaign donations from the very police union under investigation. His career collapsed overnight. Marcus, standing before the press, said only one thing: justice doesn't destroy lives. It reveals the truth about them. Meanwhile, Harlan's sentencing drew little media attention. The courtroom was nearly empty when the judge spoke. Officer Harlan, she said, you had 20 years to be the protector you swore to be. Instead, you used your authority to harm. You'll serve 18 months for obstruction and assault, with the remainder suspended for cooperation. Harlan said nothing. When he was led away, his wife Maya didn't show up. Their house had been sold, his name erased from every record of honor. In the years to come, he would fade into quiet obscurity. Another warning of what happens when arrogance outruns conscience. Back in Seattle, spring brought new beginnings. The Thompson sisters stood on the stage of City Hall, surrounded by their peers, as Mayor Peterson presented them with the Civic Courage Award. The applause felt different this time. Not pity, but respect. Aaliyah spoke first, her voice clear. Justice isn't a moment, it's a movement. And it starts when ordinary people do the right thing, even when nobody's watching. Brianna followed, her tone softer but just as powerful. We're not victims anymore. We're voices. After the ceremony. Marcus stood watching them from a distance, his eyes glistening with quiet pride. Elena slipped her arm around him. They did it, she whispered. No, he said gently. They started it, that night, as the family gathered at home. Laughter filled the air for the first time in months. Outside. Rain began to fall over Seattle again, but this time it felt different. Cleaner, softer, as though washing away the last traces of pain in one corner of the city. Brooks closed his eyes in silent prayer before heading to his next seminar, in another. Pastor Lewis prepared a sermon titled, The Hard Road to Redemption, and across town, two young women, once humiliated, now honored, sat together at their desk, writing the words that would headline their next campaign. Equality is not given, it's built. One act of courage at a time. The system had been scarred but awakened. The people who broke it had been punished, and those who fought it had risen stronger. The price of justice was heavy. Careers lost, trust shattered, innocence stolen. But what it bought was something priceless. Change. Real, lasting change. And for the Thompson family. That was worth everything. A year had passed since the trial that changed Seattle, yet its echoes still shaped every conversation about justice across the state. What began as a wrongful arrest had transformed into a movement, one built not on anger, but on courage, compassion, and truth, on a bright spring afternoon. The Thompson family stood together at Seattle's City Hall, where a new plaque glimmered under the sunlight. It read, In honor of Aaliyah and Brianna Thompson, for turning pain into purpose. The hall was filled with hundreds of people, teachers, officers, students, and families who had followed the story that redefined accountability in Washington. Cameras flashed as Mayor Lauren Peterson stepped to the podium, her voice steady. Today, we celebrate not just two young women, but the birth of a new chapter in justice, one written by courage, not fear. The audience rose in applause. Aaliyah and Brianna, now 18, exchanged a quiet look of pride and disbelief when it was their turn to speak. Aaliyah approached the microphone first. She was poised, confident, her words carrying the same calm conviction that once silenced a courtroom. A year ago, she began. We were treated like criminals for doing what was right. We thought our lives were ruined. But today, I understand something bigger. Justice doesn't happen in one courtroom. It happens every time someone chooses to stand up, even when it's hard. The crowd listened intently, every word resonating. We didn't want to be symbols. She continued softly. We just wanted to be heard. And if our voices helped others find theirs, then every moment of fear was worth it. Brianna took the stage next. Her eyes glistened, but her tone was gentle, full of quiet strength. For a long time, I was angry. I couldn't sleep. I kept asking why something so wrong could happen to people who only tried to help. But what I've learned is this. Pain can destroy you, or it can teach you. I chose to let it teach me. She paused, her voice breaking slightly. My sister taught me to speak up. My parents taught me to fight with grace, and even those who hurt us. They taught me what kind of person I never want to become. The hall fell silent, the kind of silence that only truth can create. Then, slowly, the crowd rose again, their applause long and heartfelt. After the ceremony, Marcus and Elena stood quietly at the edge of the stage, watching their daughters greet supporters. Marcus spoke first, his voice low. Do you ever think about how close we came to losing them that night? Elena nodded. Every day. But maybe we had to lose something. Our faith in the system. To build something better? Marcus smiled faintly. They've done what we've been fighting for our whole lives. She looked at him, eyes soft. No, Marcus, they've gone further. Across town. Daniel Brooks sat inside a modest classroom, leading a seminar for new police cadets. The program he helped design, Integrity in Action, had become mandatory for every recruit in Seattle. On the whiteboard behind him were the words, "Empathy before enforcement." He paced slowly, hands folded. You'll face moments when fear will try to make your decisions for you. He told them, don't let it. Look at the person, not the profile, because the badge doesn't make you right. Your choices do. One young cadet raised her hand. Officer Brooks, why did you stay in Seattle after everything that happened? He paused, thinking, because running away would have meant nothing changed. I owed it to those girls, and to myself, to stay and fix what I broke. Meanwhile, Pastor Jamal Lewis's church was fuller than ever. His latest sermon, The Weight of Forgiveness, had drawn people from all walks of life. Justice and mercy, he said from the pulpit, are not enemies. One corrects what's wrong, the other heals what's left behind, and sometimes, if you're blessed, they meet in the same story, in the back pew. Brooks listened quietly, his eyes closed. That evening, at the Thompson home, the family gathered for dinner, something they hadn't done in weeks. The table was filled with laughter again, stories of school and work, and dreams for the future. Aaliyah had received her acceptance letter to Columbia University, planning to study law like her mother. Brianna had been offered a scholarship at the Seattle Institute of Art, where her painting Freedom's First Breath had been permanently displayed in the main lobby. Marcus raised a glass, his voice warm with pride. To my daughters, may your courage outlive this generation. Elena smiled. And may justice never need another reminder. They clinked glasses, the sound small but meaningful, a quiet echo of resilience. Outside, the nightlights of Seattle shimmered across the bay. The world had changed in a year, laws rewritten, policies strengthened, hearts awakened. But perhaps the greatest change was unseen, a shift in conscience, a ripple that began with two girls who refused to bow to injustice. As Aaliyah looked out the window that night, she whispered to her sister, "We turned our pain into purpose, didn't we?" Brianna smiled softly. "Yeah. And we're just getting started." And somewhere in the city, under the glow of a quiet streetlight, a new officer on patrol stopped to help a young boy fix his fallen bike chain. A simple act, unnoticed, but born from a story that reminded Seattle what justice was truly meant to look like. Human, humble, and finally, fair. Thank you for watching this story. If it touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter. Stories about justice, courage, and the power of doing what's right.